She failed the alien purity test, but the human's intervention changed everything. The merciless twin desert. Suns beat down on Thorne's back as he crouched behind a jagged rock formation observing the alien settlement through. His tactical visor sweat trickled down his spine beneath the black combat armor that hugged his muscular frame. The settlement, a collection of pale stone structures with shimmering heat-resistant domes, buzzed with unusual activity. Unusual activity at the central plaza, Thorne muttered into his calm, some kind of ceremony. Remember your orders, Commander Briggs's gruff voice crackled in his ear. Observe only the Valorans are notoriously protective of their customs. We need that trade agreement. Thorne grunted acknowledgement but kept his focus on the growing crowd. His enhanced vision zoomed in on what appeared to be a punishment platform erected in the center of the plaza. Something about the scene made his gut tighten that he whispered, disabling his calm link. The crowd parted as four robed figures escorted a slender female to the platform. Even from this distance, Thorne could see her delicate pale lilac skin and the silver hair that cascaded down her back. She wore only a tattered, dust-covered dress that barely reached her thighs. Her wrists were bound with what looked like technological restraints, glowing bands that pulsed with an eerie blue light. Thorne's jaw clenched as the alien girl was secured to a metal frame, her back exposed to the crowd. An older Valyrian male stepped forward, unfurling a multi-stranded whip that crackled with energy at the tips. For the crime of impurity, the Ellers's voice boomed across the plaza, amplified by some unseen technology. Abaya Nextal will receive 50 lashes. May this cleanse her spirit and restore honor to her lineage. The crowd murmured their approval, but Thorne caught something in their collective voice, not bloodlust, but resignation. This was tradition, not entertainment. Thorne's mind raced. 50 lashes with that energy whip would kill her, or worse, break her mind. His hand moved instinctively to the pulse rifle strapped to his back. A memory flashed the night before in a dimly lit tavern at the settlement's edge. Silver hair spilling across his chest, lilac skin flushed with passion, whispered promises and stolen kisses. Abia, the same woman now bound to the punishment frame. Thorne muttered, already moving. The executioner raised his whip. The crowd fell silent, and Aya's shoulders tensed in anticipation of the first blow. She is now under my protection, Thorne's voice thundered across the plaza as he strode forward, his black armor gleaming in the harsh sunlight. His hand rested casually on his sidearm, but his stance was anything but casual. Legs braced, shoulders squared, every inch the ballet hardened human warrior. The crowd froze, turning as one to stare at the human interloper. The executioner's whip remained poised in midair. This is not your concern, human, the elder said, his voice cold. This is Valoran justice. Thorne continued his steady approach, his eyes never leaving awe. Her expression shifted from shock to something else, hope perhaps, or something deeper. I claim the right of Kavish, Thorne announced, using the ancient Valyrian term for champions' intervention, a loophole. Their law he learned about during his mission briefing. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. The elder's face contorted with rage. You dare invoke Kavish? You are not Valyrian. Check your own laws, Thorne replied, now standing at the base of the platform. The right of Kavish can be claimed by any warrior of honor regardless of birth. No, I claim it now, the elder conferred hurriedly with his companions, their voices hushed but agitated. Finally, he turned back to Thorne. The right of Kaipish requires trial by combat against her accuser, he said, gesturing to a tall, muscular Valyrian male who stepped forward from the crowd. Merrick Dinsar will face you. If you win, the girl goes free. If you lose, you both face punishment. Thorne sized up his opponent, nearly 7 feet tall with the characteristic lilac skin of the Valyrians, but darker, more weathered. His eyes were cold, calculating. I accept, Thorne said, removing his tactical visor and placing it on his belt. Merrick smiled, revealing pointed teeth. I will enjoy breaking you human. After I finish with you, I will ensure the impure one's punishment is thorough. Thorn's expression remained impassive, but his eyes hardened. Talk is cheap, big guy, let's dance. As the crowd formed a circle around them, Thorn glanced at Aya. Her eyes met his, violet irises swimming with fear, gratitude, and something that made his heart race faster than the impending combat. Begin, the elder shouted. Merrick lunged with surprising speed for his size, but Thorn was ready. Years of combat training kicked in as he sidestepped the charge, landing a solid blow to the Valyrian's kidney region. Mara grunted but spun quickly, his fist connecting with Thorn's shoulder. The impact sent Thorn staggering back. Damn. These aliens were strong. He'd need to be smarter, not just rely on strength. Merrick pressed his advantage, raining blows that Thorn barely managed to block. One caught him on the jaw and he tasted blood. Is this the best humans offer? Merrick taunted, circling him. Thorn spat blood onto the sand. Just warming up, princess. He fainted, left, then dropped low, sweeping Merrick's legs from under him. The Valyrian crashed to the ground with a roar of anger. Thorn pounced, driving his knee into Merrick's chest and landing 3 rapid punches to his face. Merrick bucked him off with a surge of strength, and they both scrambled to their feet. The crowd was silent now, watching the contest with rapt attention. They circled each other, both bleeding, both wary. Thorn noticed Merrick favoring his right side. The kidney shot had done some damage. You failed the purity test because of me, didn't you? Thorn said quietly, just loud enough for Merrick to hear. She chose me over you. Merrick's face contorted with rage. She was promised to me. Our bloodlines were to join. Guess she had other ideas. Thorn smirked, deliberately provoking him. With a roar, Merrick charged again. Blind with fury, Thorn was counting on this anger made fighters sloppy. He sidestepped at the last moment, using Merrick's momentum against him, and delivered a devastating uppercut that connected with the Valyrian's jaw. Merrick staggered, dazed. Thorn didn't let up. A flurry of precise strikes to vulnerable points: throat, solar plexus, knee, and Merrick went down hard. Thorn stood over him, breathing heavily. Glared up at him, blood streaming from his nose and mouth. Never your choice, Thorn shrugged. Then delivered a final blow that rendered the Valyrian unconscious. The silence was deafening. Then the elder stepped forward. The human has won the right of Kavish, he announced, his voice tight with displeasure. Aya Nixtal is released to his custody. Thorn immediately moved to the punishment frame, his fingers working quickly to release the restraints. Aya collapsed against him, her legs weak from standing so long in one position. I've got you, he murmured, supporting her weight easily. You shouldn't have come, she whispered, but her arms tightened around him. They'll never accept this. Don't care, Thorn replied, guiding her through the parting crowd. Let's get you somewhere safe. As they left the plaza, Thorn felt the weight of hundreds of alien eyes on his back. He just upended their traditions, challenged their authority, and claimed one of their own. His mission was definitely compromised, and he couldn't bring himself to regret it for a second. We need to move, Thorn said, his voice low and urgent as he guided Aya through the narrow alleyways of the settlement. The commotion from the central plaza still echoed behind them. Angry voices rising above the general den. Aba stumbled, her legs weak from hours spent bound to the punishment frame. Thorn caught her easily, his strong arms steadying her against his armored chest. I can't believe you did that, she whispered, her violet eyes wide with a mixture of awe and fear. No one challenges the elders, no one. Thorn's mouth quirked into a half smile. First time for everything, Princess. A shout from behind them sent them ducking into a shadow doorway. Thorn pulled Aya close, his back to the street, as a patrol of Valyrian guards rushed past. She fit perfectly against him, her slender form molding to his muscular frame. The contact sent a jolt of electricity through him, reminiscent of their night together. Your Commander Briggs will have your head for this, Abia murmured against His chest, her breath warm even through his armor. I heard your communication. Earlier you were supposed to observe, only Briggs can deal with it, Thorn replied, checking the street before guiding her forward again. I wasn't about to watch them tear you apart. Because of, he paused, glancing down at her, because of me. Aya's pale lilac skin flushed a deeper purple. The test measures more than physical intimacy. It detects emotional attachment outside one's assigned bond. I was promised to Merrick since childhood, and you chose differently. Not, Thorn said, his voice softening. I chose you, she admitted, her silver hair catching the light as she looked up at him. You know, one night of freedom before a lifetime of duty. They reached the outskirts of the settlement where the buildings thinned out. Thorn led them toward a small structure partially buried in sand, a disguised Terran expeditionary force outpost. Your people have been here all along? Abai asked, surprise evident in her voice. Just me and a few others. Reconnaissance mission. Thorn placed his palm against a section of wall that appeared no different from the rest, a hidden scanner. Read his biometrics and a door slid open. Welcome to my humble abode. Inside, the temperature dropped immediately to a comfortable level. The space was small but efficiently organized, a compact command center, a small medical area, a kitchenette, and a sleeping area behind out a partition. Thorn guided Aya to a chair and began examining the restraints still circling her wrists. These need to come off, they're still draining you. Only Elder can remove them completely, she said, or someone with the right tools. Thorn winked, retrieving a device from a drawer. As he worked on the restraints, his comm unit buzzed insistently. The display showed Commander Briggs's ID. Aren't you going to answer that? Aya asked. Not right now, Thorn focused on the restraints. I've got more important things to deal with. The first band released with a soft click. Aya gasped as sensation flooded back into her hand. Thorn gently massaged her wrist, his calloused fingers surprisingly tender against her delicate skin. Why did you risk everything for me? She asked quietly. Last night was wonderful, but nothing, Thorn interrupted, working on the second restraint. I saw you in trouble. I acted. Simple as that? Nothing about this is simple, Abia countered. You've made yourself an enemy of Merrick and the Elders. Your mission is compromised. The second band released. Thorn set aside his tools and took both her hands and his thumbs, tracing circles on her palms. Worth it. The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with unspoken emotions. Aya's eyes darkened as she leaned forward slightly. You humans are so impulsive, she whispered. Part of our charm, Thorn replied, his voice rough. Their faces were inches apart now. Thorn could see the flecks of darker purple in her violet irises, smell the sweet exotic scent of her skin like desert flowers after rain. The calm unit buzzed again, more urgently, this time with a sigh. Thorn reluctantly pulled away and answered. Thorn here. What the hell have you done? Commander Briggs's voice filled the small space, taut with controlled fury. You were explicitly ordered to observe only. Situation changed, sir. Had to intervene. You've potentially compromised months of diplomatic work for what, some alien girl? Thorn's jaw tightened. She was going to be tortured, sir. 50 lashes with an energy whip because she spent the night with me. A long silence followed, then surprisingly Briggs's tone shifted. Is that so interesting? This might actually work in our favor, sir. I've been contacted by a faction within the Virian leadership, progressives who oppose these app tests. They've been looking for a catalyst for change. You may have just provided it. Thorn exchanged a surprised glance with Aya. What are your orders, sir? Stay put for now. Protect the girl. I'm sending reinforcements, and we'll arrange a meeting with this progressive faction. Briggs out. As the comm went silent, Thorn turned back to Abaya. Well, that was unexpected. There are those among my people who wish for change, she said. The old ways, they're dying as they should. Thorn moved to sit beside her on the small couch. So I'm not completely screwed? Not completely, she replied with a small smile. Though Merrick won't give up easily, he considers me his property. You're no one's property, Thorn said firmly, his hand finding hers again, Aya's. Fingers intertwined with his. In my culture, a failed purity test means disgrace. No Valyrian will ever claim me. Now, good, Thorn said, his voice dropping to a husky whisper, because I already have. The tension between them finally broke. Aya leaned forward, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that had started gentle but quickly blazed into something more urgent. Thorn's arms encircled her, pulling her onto his lap as the kiss deepened. This is madness, Aya whispered against his mouth. A human and a Varian, the best kind of madness, Thorn replied, his hands tangling in her silver hair, their bodies pressed together, finding the same rhythm they had discovered the night before in the small outpost hidden from the eyes of both their peoples. They created their own world, one where differences in species and culture melted away, leaving only desire and a growing connection that neither had anticipated. Outside, the twin suns began to set, casting long shadows across the desert. Inside, Thorn and Abia discovered each other anew, their passion a defiant statement against the traditions that would keep them apart. The warning sensors blared to life just as Thorn was checking his weapons cache. Aya jumped at the sudden noise, her violet eyes widening. What is that? She asked, pulling the desert key tighter around her slender frame. Thorn moved swiftly to the security console. Perimeter alert, we've got company. The display showed multiple heat signatures approaching from the direction of the settlement, at least 15 hostiles. Looks like Marek isn't taking his defeat. Well, he never does, Aya said, moving to stand beside him. Her shoulder brushed against his, and despite the danger, Thorn felt that familiar spark between them. His pride is a legendary among our people. Thorn activated the comm unit. Briggs, we've got a situation. Multiple hostiles approaching the outpost. I see them on satellite, the commander replied. Reinforcements are still hours out. Can you hold position? I've got enough firepower to make them think twice, Thorn said, eyeing his arsenal. But if they're determined, hold if possible. But your priority is the safety of the asset. Thorn glanced at Aya, who raised an eyebrow at being called an asset. He couldn't help but smile at her expression. Understood, Sir. Thorn out as he closed the communication. The first impacts struck the outpost's exterior, not weapons fire, but something heavier. They're setting up breaching charges, Thorn said, checking the external cameras. Smart, they want to take us alive. Marek will want to make an example of both of us, Abia said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. Public punishment for defying tradition. Thorn's jaw tightened. Not happening. He handed her a small pulse pistol. You know how to use this. She took the weapon with surprising confidence. Point and shoot. I've seen human vids. There's a bit more to it than that, he said with a wry smile, but close enough. Another impact shook the outpost stronger this time. Dust sifted down from the ceiling. They're using thermal charges, Thorn said, checking the structural integrity readings. 2, maybe 3 more, and they'll breach the main door. Aya's expression hardened with sudden resolve. We need to fight. No, Thorn said firmly, we need to be smart. There are too many of them. He moved quickly around the outpost, gathering essential supplies and shoving them into a pack. There's an emergency exit, a tunnel that leads to a secondary position about half a click away. We go there. Hold up, wait for reinforcements. Run and hide, Aya asked, disappointment evident in her voice. Thorn paused, turning to face her. Tactical retreat. Big difference. Their eyes locked, and for a moment the danger outside seemed to fade away. Thorn was struck again by her beauty, and not just her exotic features, but the fire in her eyes, the determination in her stance. Another explosion rocked the outpost. This one close enough to make the lights flicker. That's our cue, Thorn said, slinging the pack over his shoulder and grabbing his rifle. Let's move. He led her to a maintenance panel at the rear of the outpost that concealed the emergency exit. As he worked the controls, Aya placed a hand on his arm. Thorn, she said softly, if they capture us, they won't. He promised, meeting her gaze, but If they do, she insisted, I want you to know that I don't regret anything last night. Today, I would choose it all again. The intensity in her eyes made his breath catch. Without thinking, he pulled her close and kissed her hard, urgent, a promise and a declaration all at once. She responded with equal fervor, her body melding against his as if they were made to fit together. The final warning alarm broke them apart. The main door's integrity was failing. Go, Thorn said, opening the hidden passage. I'm right behind you. The tunnel was narrow and dark, illuminated only by emergency strips along the floor. They moved quickly, the sounds of the Valerians breaching the outpost growing fainter. Behind them, your people plan for everything, Aya remarked as they navigated the passage. First rule of special ops: always have an exit strategy, Thorn replied after several minutes. They reached the end of the tunnel. Thorn entered a code on a small panel and a door slid open, revealing a modest cavern outfitted with basic survival gear and communications equipment. Welcome to Plan B, he said, securing the door behind them. Not as comfortable as the outpost, but it'll do. Aya surveyed the space with appreciation. Humans never cease to amaze me on my world. Such preparation would be seen as showing doubt in the rightness of one's path. On my world, we call it not being stupid, Thorn replied with a grin. He set up the communications array, establishing a secure link to Command. Briggs, we've evacuated the primary outpost. Hostiles have breached it, but we're secure at the secondary position. Good work, Briggs replied. Reinforcements ETA now 5 hours. Maintain position and minimize contact. Understood, Thorn out as he shut down the calm. Thorn became acutely aware of how small the space was and how close Abia stood. The adrenaline of their escape was fading, replaced by a different kind of tension. So she said, her voice softer now. 5 hours, give or take, Thorn replied, suddenly finding it hard to meet her gaze. A stepped closer, her fingers tracing the edge of his armor. On Valier warriors often seek comfort before battle. It's believed to strengthen the spirit. Thorn raised an eyebrow. Is that so? She nodded, her violet eyes darkening. It's a very ancient tradition, very sacred. Well, Thorn said, his voice dropping to a husky whisper as he pulled her against him. Far be it from me to disrespect alien traditions. Their lips met again, but this time there was no urgency, no danger driving them, only the slow building heat that had been simmering between them since their first meeting. Thorn's hands found the fasteners of her desert gear while her nimble fingers worked at his armor in the dim light of their hidden sanctuary. They discovered each other, a new human and Valerian, so different and yet so perfectly matched. Their bodies spoke a language that needed no translation, finding harmony in the ancient rhythm that transcends species and worlds. Later, as they lay entwined on the emergency bedding, Aya traced the scars on Thorn's chest with gentle fingers. Your kind is so passionate, she murmured, so present in every moment. Valerian men are taught to approach intimacy with detachment, as a duty rather than a pleasure. Their loss, Thorn said, pulling her closer. Indeed, she agreed with a smile that made his heart race. Perhaps that's why I failed the purity test so spectacularly. Once I experienced human passion, how could I ever accept less? Outside their sanctuary, danger waited, but for now, in this moment stolen from fate, a human warrior and a Virian rebel found perfect understanding in each other's arms. Thorn woke to the soft beeping of the communications array. Abea was curled against him, her silver hair spilling across his chest, her breathing deep, and even for a moment he simply watched her sleep, marveling at how quickly this alien woman had become so important to him. The beeping grew more insistent. With a sigh, Thorn carefully extricated himself from Aya's embrace and moved to the console, keeping the thermal blanket wrapped around his waist. Thorn here, he said quietly, activating the secure channel. Specialist, we have a situation. Commander Briggs' voice was tense. Lieutenant Parker was captured during a reconnaissance sweep near the settlement. Thorne's stomach dropped. Parker was one of their best, young, brilliant, and too damn curious for his own good. How he asked, keeping his voice low. Ambush Mayor Rex forces found his observation post. We have partial helmet cam footage. They're using him as bait. Thorne, they're broadcasting his capture on local channels, saying they'll execute him at dawn unless you and the Valyrian woman surrender. Thorne muttered. Time frame local dawn is in 4 hours, but there's more. The Galactic Council caught wind of this situation. They're dispatching a diplomatic team with our reinforcements. 3 hours. Thorne process this information quickly so the council arrives after Parker's execution deadline. Precisely. Merrick knows what he's doing. If we lose Parker, it complicates the diplomatic situation significantly, and if we surrender, we lose our leverage with the council. Thorne concluded. Correct. We need Parker alive, and we need you and the woman free when the council representatives arrive. Briggs paused. This is your call. Specialist, you're on the ground. Thorne ran a hand through his hair. Send me Parker's coordinates and any surveillance you have of the area. I'll handle it. Transmitted. Good luck. Thorne. Briggs out. As the communication ended, Thorne turned to find Aya awake, watching him with concerned eyes. Your friend is in trouble, she said. It wasn't a question. Lieutenant Parker captured by Merrick. Thorne moved to the weapons cache, his mind already formulating a plan. They're using him as bait to draw us out. Abia arose, wrapping the blanket around her lilac form. And you're going after him. Have to. He's one of ours. Humans and their loyalty, she said, but there was admiration in her voice. A warrior who allows himself to be captured is considered unworthy of rescue. Thorne paused in his preparations. That's cold. It's practical, she countered, then softened. Or so I was taught. I'm beginning to question many of our so-called practical traditions. She approached him, placing a hand on his arm. I'm coming with you. Too dangerous. I know the settlement better than you do. I know how Merrick thinks. Her violet eyes held his with unwavering determination. And I won't sit here waiting while you risk your life. Thorne recognized the stubborn set of her jaw and knew argument would be futile. Fine, but you follow my lead. Understood. Her lips curved in a smile that made his heart skip. As you wish. Human. They dressed quickly and efficiently, though Thorne couldn't help but steal glances at Aya as she donned the desert gear. There was something intensely intimate about watching her dress after their night together, more intimate somehow than what had come before. What? She asked, catching his gaze. Nothing, he said, then reconsidered. Actually, no, not nothing. You're beautiful. I not just your appearance, everything about you. The purple flush that spread across her cheeks was becoming one of his favorite sights. Such honesty, she murmured. Another human trait I find appealing. The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken emotions. Then Thorne cleared his throat and returned to the tactical display. Parker is being held here, he said, indicating a structure near the center of the settlement, the Temple of Purity, the most sacred building in the settlement. Aya confirmed, her expression darkening. And the most heavily guarded, of course. It is, Thorne muttered. The council representatives arrive in 3 hours. Parker's execution is scheduled for 4 hours from now. A deliberate choice, Abia said. Merrick wants to create a diplomatic incident. If your council witnesses an execution, it could complicate relations between our peoples for generations. Then we don't let it happen. Thorne studied the schematics. We get an extract Parker and get out before the council arrives. Clean and simple. It raised an eyebrow. There's nothing clean or simple about infiltrating the temple. That's where you come in. I need everything you know about the temple's layout, guard rotations, security measures, everything. For the next hour, they developed a plan. Ours knowledge of Virian customs and security protocols proved invaluable. The temple, while heavily guarded, had weaknesses, particularly in its ancient ventilation system designed before modern security measures were implemented. Theirs Something else you should know, Aya said as they finalized their approach. The council's arrival isn't just about your lieutenant. Word of my failed purity test has spread the progressives among my people have been pushing for council intervention for years. The tests violate several interspecies rights agreements, so we're in the middle of a Valyrian political struggle, Thorn said precisely. May I reckon the traditionalists want to make an example of us before the council can intervene. She hesitated. There's a reason the purity tests are so important to the elders. They're not just about maintaining tradition, they're about control of what of who can access our ancient technologies. The tests identify those with genetic markers that could potentially challenge the elders' monopoly on power. Her eyes met his. My failure wasn't just because of our night together, it was because something in you, in human DNA perhaps, awakened something in me that the elders fear. Thorn absorbed this information. So this isn't just about us anymore. It never was, Aya said softly. We've stumbled into something much bigger than a forbidden romance. The implications were enormous, but Thorn forced himself to focus on the immediate mission, one problem at a time. First, we save Parker. Then we deal with interspecies politics. Abode nodded, but her expression remained troubled. Thorn, what happens after when this is over? The question caught him off guard. In the intensity of the moment, he hadn't thought beyond survival. Now faced with her uncertain gaze, he realized how deeply he'd come to care for this alien woman in such a short time. I don't know, he admitted, but whatever happens, we face it together. Her expression softened and she leaned forward to kiss him, gentle yet passionate, a promise sealed without words. When they parted, her eyes held a new resolve. Together, she agreed. Now, let's go save your friend. The twin moons cast elongated shadows across the sand as Thorn and Abia approached the settlement's edge. The massive temple of purity loomed ahead, its dome gleaming faintly in the moonlight. The ventilation access is there, Aya whispered, pointing to an ornate grate set low in the eastern wall. It's considered too sacred for regular guards. The elders believe ancient traditions protect better than technology. Thorn scanned the area with his tactical visor. No electronic security that I can detect. Your traditions just made our job easier. They moved silently through the shadows, freezing twice as Valyrian patrols passed nearby. Each time, Thorn noticed how Abaya's body tensed against his and how naturally his hand found the small of her back to reassure her. You're good at this, she whispered as they reached the ventilation grate. Moving unseen, special ops training, he replied, examining the grate fastenings. Though I've never had such attractive company on a mission before. Even in the darkness, he could see the deeper purple flush spread across her lilac cheeks. Focus on the mission, human, she murmured, but there was warmth in her voice. The grate came loose with surprising ease. Thorn went first, using his visor to navigate the narrow shaft, while Aya followed close behind, occasionally guiding him with whispered directions. The central chamber should be ahead, she said after they had crawled for several minutes. That's where they'd keep an important prisoner. Thorn paused at a junction, his visor detecting heat signatures. Below, I count 4 guards and 1 human. Parker, he shifted to peer through an ornate grate that overlooked the chamber. The room was vast, with soaring ceilings and ancient pillars. In the center stood Lieutenant Parker, bound to a punishment frame similar to the one Aya had been strapped to earlier. The young officer's face was bruised, but his expression remained defiant as Merrick paced before him. Your friend has abandoned you. Merrick was saying he values the alien female more than his own kind. Parker laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the chamber. Shows what you know about humans. We don't abandon our own. Merrick struck him across the face. Then where is he, the great human warrior who defied our traditions? Right here. Asshole, Thorn muttered under his breath. Abia touched his shoulder. We need a distraction. Thorn nodded, retrieving a Small device from his pack, this will create a sonic disruption on the far side of the temple when the guards respond. We drop down, free Parker, and exit through the north corridor. He activated the device and placed it against the shaft wall. Seconds later, a piercing wail erupted from the far side of the temple, accompanied by flashing lights. The guards reacted immediately, rushing toward the disturbance. Merrick hesitated, then barked in order, secure the perimeter. I'll watch the prisoner. As soon as the guards left, Thorn kicked out the grate and dropped silently to the floor below. You were right behind him. Merrick spun around, his hand reaching for his weapon, but Thorn was faster. A swift strike with his stun baton sent the Valyrian crumpling to the ground. Took you long enough, Parker said, managing a grin despite his split lip. Traffic was hell, Thorn replied, working to release the restraints. You okay? Been better. They've been scanning me, asking weird questions about human genetics. Parker winced as the restraints released, but I found something. Thorn, I was tracking energy readings when they caught me. A massive power source beneath the temple. Abea's eyes widened. The ancestral core, it's not just a legend. What core? Thorn asked, supporting Parker as they moved toward the north corridor. Ancient technology from our early days of space travel, Aya explained. The elders claim only they can access it due to their pure bloodlines. It's why the purity tests are so important. They identify those with genetic markers that might challenge their control. Parker nodded eagerly. Despite his injuries, they were comparing my scans to yours. Thorn, something about human DNA having compatible markers. Before Thorn could respond, alarms blared throughout the temple. Merrick had regained consciousness and triggered a security alert. Time to go, Thorn said, drawing his sidearm. North corridor as planned. They moved swiftly through the temple's labyrinthian passages, Aya leading the way with surprising confidence. Twice they encountered guards, but Thorn's combat training and Abaya's unexpected knowledge of Valyrian martial arts made short work of them. Temple defense training, she explained after dispatching a guard with a fluid take down. All Valyrian females learn it. Remind me not to get on your bad side, Thorn said with admiration. They reached a small antechamber with a door that, according to Abby, led outside, but as Thorn moved to open it, Parker stumbled, clutching his side. I need a minute, he gasped, leaning against the wall. They worked me over pretty good. Thorn checked the wound, a deep gash that needed attention. We can't stop now. The exit is right there. You two go, Parker said. I'll only slow you down. The council representatives will be here soon. I can hold out until then. We're not leaving you, Thorn insisted. Actually, you should, Parker replied, his expression suddenly serious. I overheard the elders talking. They're terrified of what you and Aya represent together. Something about your combined genetic markers being able to activate the core fully. Abio's breath caught. That's why my purity test failed so dramatically. It wasn't just our physical union, it was a genetic resonance that the test detected. A resonance that threatens their control. Parker added. You two need to get to the council representatives. Tell them everything. The sound of approaching guards echoed down the corridor. Their time was running out. Go, Parker urged, pressing his sidearm into Thorn's hand. I'll create a diversion. Thorn hesitated, torn between his duty to his fellow soldier and the larger mission. He's right, Aya said softly. We need to reach the council. What we've discovered changes everything for my people. After moments internal struggle, Thorn nodded. Fine, but take this. He handed Parker a small beacon. Activate it when you're clear. Briggs will find you. Will do, Parker promise. Now get going, you two crazy kids, with a final nod to his comrade. Thorn took Abea's hand and slipped through the door into the cool desert night. They moved swiftly away from the temple, using the buildings for cover as they headed toward the settlement's edge where the council representatives would arrive. Your friend is very brave, Aya said as they paused in the shadow of a dwelling. All humans are, Thorn replied with a hint of pride. It's kind of our thing. She smiled, her violet eyes reflecting the moonlight. I'm beginning to see that your people rush into danger. Form deep bonds, quickly act on instinct rather than calculation. It's so different from how we're taught to be. Is that a compliment or a criticism? Thorn asked, pulling her closer. Not definitely a compliment, she murmured, her body fitting perfectly against his. Your human impulsiveness is intoxicating. The moment stretched between them, charged with tension despite the danger surrounding them. Thorn found himself captivated by the way her silver hair caught the moonlight, the subtle curve of her lips, the warmth in her violet eyes. We should keep moving, he said reluctantly. Yes, she agreed, making no move to pull away. We should. Instead, she rose on her tiptoes and pressed her lips to his in a kiss that spoke of everything they'd been through together, a danger, passion, and a connection that defied the boundaries of their different worlds. When they finally broke apart, the determination in her eyes matched his own. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The landing pad at the settlement's edge hummed with activity as the Galactic Council's sleek diplomatic vessel touched down. Its polished hull reflected the first rays of dawn breaking over the desert horizon. Perfect timing, Thorn muttered, watching from their concealed position behind a storage facility. His tactical visor identified 6 figures disembarking, 4 council representatives of various species and 2 human expeditionary force officers, including Commander Briggs. Those are the most powerful diplomats in the sector. Aya whispered, her eyes wide. The one with the blue crest is Delegate Horn from the Proxima Collective, and that's Ambassador Teller of the Regelian Confederation. Thorn glanced at her with surprise. How do you know all this? I worked in the temple archives. Before, she gestured vaguely between them, a hint of mischief in her violet eyes. Before I failed my purity test in such spectacular fashion. Best failure ever, Thorn said with a grin, squeezing her hand. Their moment was interrupted by movement from the settlement center. A procession of Valyrian elders approached the landing pad, led by a stern-faced male Thorn hadn't seen before. High Elder Renath Abia explained, the most conservative of the council, and look, Merrick is with them. Indeed, Merrick walked just behind the High Elder, his posture rigid with formality, but his eyes scanning the area with predatory intensity. He's looking for us, Thorn said. We need to time this perfectly. They watched as formal greetings were exchanged between the Galactic Council representatives and the Valyrian elders. The diplomatic language was flowery and precise, but Thorn could sense the underlying tension. The Council has received troubling reports about certain practices on Valyr, Ambassador Teller was saying, her feathered crest rippling with diplomatic concern, specifically regarding your purity tests and their compatibility with the Galactic Charter of Sentient Rights. High Elder Raynoth's expression remained impassive. Our traditions date back millennia, Ambassador. They are the foundation of our society and exempt under the cultural sovereignty clause of the very charter you cite. Cultural sovereignty has limits when it involves punishment without due process. Commander Briggs interjected, his military bearing a stark contrast to the diplomats' fluid postures. A misunderstanding for me, said smoothly. Recent incidents have been exaggerated by those unfamiliar with our ways. Now, Thorn whispered to Aya, before they control the narrative. They emerged from their hiding place, walking confidently toward the gathering. The reaction was immediate. Merrick's face contorted with rage. The elders stiffened in collective shock, and the council representatives turned with expressions ranging from surprise to interest. Specialist Thorn Commander Briggs acknowledged, his professional tone belied by the relief in his eyes. We're concerned about your status. Apologies for the delay, Sir. Thorn replied formally. We had to rescue Lieutenant Parker from unauthorized detention. This is the female who failed the purity test, High Elder Renath said. His voice cold, and the human who interfered with our sacred traditions I prefer saved an innocent woman from torture. Thorn countered. Ambassador Teller stepped forward, her keen eyes assessing both Thorn and Aya. Perhaps you should explain exactly what happened. Specialist Thorn nodded, but before he could speak, March interrupted. This human corrupted a promised female, he snarled. He violated our most sacred laws and now seeks to avoid the consequences. Is that true? Delegate Horn asked, his multi-faceted eyes shifting between them. Aya stepped forward, her posture regal despite her simple clothing. I chose to be with him, she said clearly, and for that choice I was condemned to 50 lashes, a punishment designed not to correct but to break a regrettable but necessary tradition. High Elder Renath said dismissively, the purity tests maintain the integrity of our bloodlines, they maintain your control. Aya countered, the tests don't measure moral purity, they identify genetic markers that could challenge your monopoly on the ancestral core. A ripple of interest passed through the council representatives. The ancestral core, Ambassador Teller repeated. We were led to believe it was merely a religious symbol. It's very real, Thorn said. Lieutenant Parker discovered unusual energy readings beneath the temple before he was captured. The elders have been using the purity test to identify and eliminate anyone who might have the genetic ability to access the core technology. High Elder Renath's composed facade cracks slightly. These are dangerous lies. Then you won't mind if the council investigates these claims, Commander Briggs suggested, including examining this core technology that would violate our most sacred spaces. Merrick protested. What are you afraid they'll find? Thorn challenged. The tension was palpable as the two groups faced off. Thorn felt Baya's hand slip into his, a silent gesture of solidarity that didn't go unnoticed by the observers. The physical compatibility between human and Valyrian is unexpected, Delegate Horn noted. Scientific curiosity, evident more than physical. Abia said the purity test detected a genetic resonance between us, something the elders have been trying to prevent for generations because it threatens their power. Thorn added. Parker's scans showed that certain human genetic markers are compatible with the core technology. Combined with Valyrian DNA, they could potentially activate systems the elders can't control. Ambassador Teller's crest fluttered with interest. If true, this has significant implications for interspecies relations throughout the sector. It's a perversion of nature. Merrick spat. Humans and Valyrians were never meant to mix yet. Here we are, Thorn said, his arm slipping protectively around Abio's waist. Living proof that your traditions might be based on lies. High Elder Renath raised a hand for silence. These accusations require evidence. We have nothing but the word of a renegade female and a human interloper. Then let's get evidence. Commander Briggs suggested a formal investigation of the temple, the purity test devices, and this ancestral core. Absolutely not, Eric began, but High Elder Riena silenced him with a look. We have nothing to hide, the High Elder said carefully, but such an investigation must follow proper protocols. The temple is a sacred ground, of course, son. Ambassador Teller agreed. We propose a joint team, council observers and Valyrian guides, completely transparent. As the diplomats began negotiating terms, Thorn pulled Aya slightly aside. They're stalling, he whispered, giving themselves time to hide evidence or worse. Aya replied, her expression troubled. The High Elder wouldn't agree so easily unless he had a contingency plan. Thorn's commune buzzed. He checked it discreetly. A message from Parker's emergency beacon. Parker's free, he told Aya, but he says there's unusual activity at the temple. Energy signatures spiking. Aya's eyes widened. They're going to disable the core permanently rather than risk losing control. We have to stop them. Thorn glanced at the ongoing diplomatic discussion, then back at Aya. A decision crystallized in his mind. Commander, he called, interrupting the negotiations. Lieutenant Parker reports. Unusual energy signatures at the temple. The elders may be destroying evidence as we speak. Commander Briggs straightened. Ambassador, I recommend we proceed to the temple immediately. This is outrageous, Mary protested. The human is trying to create a diplomatic incident. Too late, Thorne replied. You did that when you strapped Aya to a punishment frame. As tensions escalated, Aya squeezed Thorne's hand in her eyes. He saw not fear but determination in something deeper that made his heart race. Despite the danger surrounding them, whatever came next, they would face it together. The procession to the temple moved with urgent purpose through the settlement's main thoroughfare. Thorne and Abia walked alongside Commander Briggs and the council representatives, while the High Elder and Merrick led the way with visible reluctance. What none of them expected was the crowd that began to form. It started with a few curious onlookers, Valyrians pausing in their morning routines to watch the unusual delegation, but as they progressed, the numbers swelled. Word spread through the settlement with remarkable speed. The human saved her. The council is here. They're challenging the elders. The whispers grew, multiplying like ripples in still water. Something's happening. Thorne murmured to Ao, your people, they're watching, she replied, her voice tight with emotion. Many have lost loved ones to failed purity tests they've never dared question before. By the time they reached the temple plaza, hundreds of Valyrians had gathered, their lilac faces turned toward the procession with expressions ranging from curiosity to hope. The High Elders' stride faltered at the sight. Disperse, Merrick commanded the crowd. This is temple business. No one moved. Unusual delegation, but as they progressed, the numbers swelled. Word spread through the settlement with remarkable speed. The human saved her. The council is here. They're challenging the elders. The whispers grew, multiplying like ripples in still water. Something's happening. Thorne murmured to Ao, your people, they're watching, she replied, her voice tight with emotion. Many have lost loved ones to failed purity tests they've never dared question before. By the time they reached the temple plaza, hundreds of Valyrians had gathered, their lilac faces turned toward the procession with expressions ranging from curiosity to hope. The High Elders' stride faltered at the sight. Disperse, Merrick commanded the crowd. This is temple business. No one moved. Silence was deafening. Lieutenant Parker emerged from a side street, joining their group. Despite his bruised face, he grinned at Thorne. Quite the welcoming committee. What's happening inside the temple? Thorne asked quietly. Energy readings are off the charts, Parker replied. They're definitely doing something to the core, Ambassador. Teller stepped forward. High Elder, we must proceed immediately. Any tampering with evidence would constitute a serious violation of diplomatic protocol. Before the High Elder could respond, a voice called out from the crowd, let them in, let them see the truth. Heads turned to find a middle-aged Valyrian female stepping forward, her bearing dignified despite her simple clothing. Elder Lith, Aya whispered to Thorne, a progressive voice on the council. I didn't know she was here. More voices joined Lias, the crowd's murmurs swelling into a chorus of demands. The High Elders's face darkened with anger, but he was clearly outnumbered. Very well, he said stiffly, we shall proceed. The temple doors opened, revealing the vast interior with its soaring columns and ancient inscriptions. As they entered, Thorne noticed Valyrians flowing in behind them, and not just the curious onlookers, but hundreds of citizens filling the temple in silent defiance of tradition. This is unprecedented, Aya whispered, her hand finding Thorne's. The temple has never been open to the general public. At the center of the main chamber, several elders worked frantically at a console, their movements betraying their panic. They froze at the sight of the crowd flooding into the sacred space. Step away from the control, Commander Briggs ordered. You have no authority here. Human, one elder spat. Perhaps not, Ambassador. Teller interjected smoothly, but the Galactic Council does have authority to investigate potential violations of sentient rights, especially when they involve technology of unknown power. The standoff might have escalated further, but a strange vibration suddenly ran through the temple floor. The console the elders had been working at began to glow with an eerie blue light. "What have you done?" the High Elder demanded of his subordinates. "Nothing, sir," one replied, backing away from the console. It activated on its own. All eyes turned to Thorn and Abia, who stood hand in hand near the center of the chamber. The blue glow seemed to intensify in their presence. "It's responding to them," Parker said, his scientific curiosity overriding his injuries, just like the scan suggested. The floor beneath them shifted, revealing a spiral staircase descending into darkness. The blue glow emanated from below, pulsing like a heartbeat. The core chamber, Elder Leth breathed. "It hasn't been opened in generations." High Elder Renath's composure finally cracked. "This is sacrilege at the core, is for the pure bloodlines only." "Then why is it responding to them?" someone called from the crowd. Merrick lunged forward, suddenly drawing a ceremonial blade. "I won't allow this abomination." Before he could reach Thorn and Aya, several Valerians from the crowd intercepted him, restraining him with surprising force. "Enough, Merrick," Elder Lai said firmly. "Your time has passed. We all see the truth now." The crowd's mood had shifted from curious to determined. More voices joined in calling for change, for truth, for an end to the purity test that had claimed so many of their loved ones. Ambassador Teller's crest fluttered with excitement. "I believe we are witnessing a cultural shift of historic proportions." "The question remains," Commander Briggs said, gesturing to the glowing staircase. "What's down there?" All eyes turned to Thorn and Aya. "I think it's inviting us to find out," Thorn said. Hand in hand, they descended the spiral staircase, followed by the council representatives. Commander Briggs and Elder Lith. The chamber below took their breath away. Vast circular space filled with technology unlike anything Thorn had ever seen. Flowing lines of light coursed through crystalline structures, and at the center stood a pillar of pure energy that pulsed in time with their heartbeats. "The ancestral core," Elder Lai whispered, "the source of all our advancements." As Thorn and Aya approached the central pillar, the energy within it shifted, forming patterns that resembled DNA helixes, one human, one Valerian, intertwining in perfect harmony. "It's beautiful," Aya said softly. "It's a genetic repository," B. Parker suggested, examining nearby consoles and the historical database. "The combined knowledge of ancient Valerians and something else, something not from this world." The elders taught that only the purest Valerian bloodlines could access it, Elder Lith explained, "but it seems the core has other ideas." Ambassador Teller approached one of the consoles, her diplomatic training momentarily forgotten in scientific wonder. "This technology could revolutionize species relations throughout the galaxy. If it truly responds to combined genetic markers, then perhaps isolation was never the path we were meant to follow." Elder Lith finished. Above them they could hear the sounds of change, hundreds of voices calling for reform, for an end to the purity tests, for a new beginning. The revolution had begun, not with violence but with revelation. 3 months later, Thorn stood on the balcony of the newly established Human Valerian Cultural Exchange Center, watching the twin suns set over the desert. The settlement had transformed, new buildings rising alongside the old ships from various worlds coming and going from the expanded landing field. Warm arms encircled him from behind, and he smiled. As a beer pressed against his back. "Daydreaming again?" she asked, her breath tickling his ear. "Remembering," he corrected, turning to face her. The formal robes of her new position as cultural liaison suited her, but he still preferred her in more casual attire, or nothing at all, a thought that brought heat to his cheeks. "The council delegation leaves tomorrow," she said. "Ambassador Teller seems pleased with our progress." she should be your people. Have embraced change with surprising enthusiasm. Abia laughed, and the sound. Still his favorite in the universe, were adaptable when properly motivated and humans provide excellent motivation. Her fingers traced the new insignia on his uniform, special envoy of Valor, a position created specifically for him after the events at the temple. Any regrets? He asked, suddenly serious. About us, about everything that's happened. Her violet eyes met his, filled with the same warmth and passion that had drawn him to her from the beginning. None. You saved me from punishment, but in doing so you helped free my entire people from traditions that no longer serve them. We did it together, he corrected, pulling her closer. Yes, she agreed, rising on her tiptoes to brush her lips against his. Together, the way we do everything best, as the last rays of sunlight painted the desert gold. Thorn marveled at how a single impulsive action, stepping forward to protect a woman he barely knew, had changed not just their lives but the course of two civilizations. Some might call it destiny. Thorn preferred to think of it as humanity at its best, acting on instinct, following the heart, and refusing to stand by when injustice threatened. And as Aya led him back inside to their private quarters, her eyes promising a night of passion that transcended species, he knew he wouldn't have it any other. The end.